I'm Shahar Azani, and in the news on Memorial Day weekend, United in Pain. The IDF Widows and Orphans organization is a non-profit that was established in 1991 in Israel as the sole organization recognized by the State of Israel to represent the widows, widowers, and orphans of Israel's fallen soldiers. On this Memorial Day weekend, the unique bond between Israel and the United States of America comes to life. 4 Israeli teens, all of whom lost their fathers during their army service, are visiting the United States on behalf of the IDFWO, hosted by TAPS, TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. TAPS is a U.S. nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide compassionate care to all those who are grieving the death of a military loved one, and it's been in existence since 1994. Their visit includes participation in the 28th Annual National Military Survivor Seminar and Good Grief Camp taking place in Virginia over Memorial Day weekend. Earlier this year, a TAPS mission was hosted by the IDFWO in Israel. It consisted of 3 widows and their children who were hosted by bereaved families in Israel and got a chance to partake in various memorial events in Israel in honor of IDF fallen soldiers. And like any worthy and uplifting collaboration, it's important to take a look at the people behind it. Paul Volke was killed in Afghanistan in 2012. He was a West Point graduate who had served in the Army for 14 years, including 4 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan. He was just 36 years old when he died. Tracys Volke, Paul's high school sweetheart, wife of 12 years, and mother of Andrew and Benjamin, visited Israel this past month as part of that mission. And she is the one who has made this special IDFWO visit possible. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us on JBS.
Thank you for inviting me.
So let's first of all get a little bit of your personal background. Tell us a little bit about where you come from.
Well, I met my husband, Paul, in upstate New York, where we went to high school. And we dated throughout college. Paul went to West Point, and I went to University of Maryland. And he joined the military right after college. And then I became a military spouse. I was married to him for 12 years, and I'm an attorney. And we have 2 lovely boys. And then, unfortunately,
How old are
they? Are 18 and 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So when Paul was killed, that was what, 2012?
Yes.
Describe a little bit about, since, being an Army wife and, taking care of the family alone. And he has been, like we mentioned, a couple of times on tours of duty before.
Right.
What did that create with you?
Yeah, it was really shocking because it was his 5th deployment overseas, and it was very unexpected. And we, as a military family in the US, it becomes part of our lives, being part of the military. And so, your whole life sort of changes because we live right near a military base and had to change our whole lifestyle after he died. So it's the death followed by sort of the loss of community that was really tough.
Yeah. And then, a few years later, and here you are creating this incredible initiative that, to me, it's really out of so much pain. You're actually showing, some hope in this power of coming together. What prompted you to make this connection with Israel?
Well, shortly after my husband died, we were contacted by TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, and they do a lot of grief work with children of the fallen and families of the fallen for the U.S. And they offer a lot of great opportunities. And when my oldest son was younger, we saw that there was a trip to Israel. And so we applied, and we are Jewish Americans. And so we had this big connection with, I'd never been to Israel, and my boys had never been to Israel. And wow. We sort of took a chance. And my older son just connected with it on such a deep level, connecting with military survivors from Israel, and the other families that we went with from TAPS, it made such an impact, staying with the host families, getting to know the people, seeing that this horrible thing happened to us here in the US, but it's universal. And the country that's supposed to be our homeland, it happens there too, on a greater scale. And so
when was that visit, Tracey?
that was in 2015. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so I didn't get to take my younger son. And then recently TAPS offered another visit. So we were so honored to be invited again. And now my younger son came and had a similar impact. I mean, just visiting and taking part in the Memorial Day ceremonies and the Independence Day ceremonies in Israel and watching how you all honor your fallen was really special and touching for our family.
So the most recent trip just took place last month.
That's right.
In May. You know, you're very right, because, you know, in Israel, there is a whole, the respect for the memory goes far beyond the memory. It's the understanding of the lives that were lost and the worlds, the entire worlds that were lost. So bearing in mind, you know, that principle, I want to ask you to share with me and with our viewers a few words about Paul, something personal about him, about your life, something that you have a fond memory of, that the boys have a memory of, so that we get to appreciate Paul for who he was.
Yeah, Paul was just a very kind, humble person that was very well liked by everybody and always had a great sense of humor and a good smile on his face. And he really loved the military and believed in what he was doing. And he believed that by serving in the United States military, you had a chance to make the world a better place. It's not always about combat fighting, but also about going to these other countries and improving the quality of life for them. So he was kind and humble, and also believed in what he did.
You know, I don't know if you, in the ceremonies that you took part in, there is a famous Israeli poem, the Silver Platter, that actually talks about that sacrifice, the fact that none of what we have and we enjoy in Israel, and for sure here in the United States of America, is given to us for free. And these lives, they are in their sacrifice, there are the silver platter that upon which our freedom is served. And it's really important to take those important moments to appreciate you know, that immense sacrifice that they were making, but at the end of the day, Tracey, that you are making, and Andrew is making, and Benjamin is making. Now, you mentioned the impact that your visit to Israel had. Can you describe one or two incidents, both in the previous visit or in this one, that touched you, something specific that you remember?
Well, in this last visit, we attended the ceremony that you have for those who survived the Holocaust and then came to Israel and then died in the War of Independence. And I guess I never just thought about that, as of course we revere Holocaust survivors as, you know, the most strong and powerful people. And then to think about that sacrifice coming to Israel, and then after surviving such atrocity, dying, you know, to make the world a better place for Jews, it is just something really powerful that both my son and I just remarked at. And it's what I keep telling people, like, did you ever think about this, that there are people that have done that? I mean, but the whole experience just felt like we were coming home and we were being embraced by the Israeli community and by the IDF, Widows and Orphans group. It was just a tremendous partnership.
You know, it's truly very touching coming home. What is your hope for the future, as far as, first of all, maybe about Andrew and Benjamin and their relationship with the state of Israel in the future? How do you hope to see that going?
Well, I did observe with Andrew, you know, connecting with the other children, and you know, we have stayed in touch with the host families that we've stayed with. And then, you know, Ben met Shai and Uri in Israel, and then they were immediately, you know, embraced each other when they came here. So it's just having that connection with each other is really all we have in this world, like our relationships and our connections with each other.
That's it. People to people connection. A lot of people think about this world in the complex terms of diplomacy and politics and the UN, but really at the end of the day, it's all about us as people and as human beings. This meeting, now that you have the teens visiting TAPS, and let me just ask you this, how was your initiative to make this connection between TAPS and the IDFWO in Israel? How was that received?
I think, Bonnie Carroll is the one who sort of, founded the organization and really started this initiative. I just was lucky to sort of jump on board, but I think it's been very well received. The partnerships we have with other countries so that we can say, like, at the end of the day, war is a terrible thing, but out of it comes hope. It comes, building relationships. And I think, we were so well received in Israel, and I know the Israelis are going to be embraced by our TAPS family when we get to the Good Grief Camp.
I can imagine hope being the operative word here. I can imagine what you're hoping to achieve during the teens visit in the US and going through the camp, right? Making that connection and really working on hope, making its way into everybody's lives.
That's right.
Wow, Tracy, thank you so much. It's truly both humbling and a great honor. I just want to say thank you for for who you are.
Thank you. And thank you for telling our story.
And for leveraging this in such a way that supports each other and that we support each other and people. We are truly blessed to have you, and the work that you do is incredible, and good luck on the camp. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
The IDFWO mission includes 4 teens from Israel, Uri, Shira, Maya, and Shai, who are visiting the US along with their group counselor, Nitzan Ben Eliyahu. Nitzan is also a social worker who's been working for the youth department of the IDFWO for the past 3 years. Joining us now, along with Nitzan, is Uri Kedar, who's 14, from the city of Modi'in in Israel. He is the son of Lieutenant Colonel Dolev Kedar of blessed memory. Dolev died in battle with Hamas terrorists near the Gaza border during Operation Protective Edge in 2014. Nitzan, Uri, welcome. So happy to have you with us.
Thank you for having us.
Terrific. So first of all, maybe we'll start with you, Nitzan. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and maybe a few words about the mission.
Okay. So my name is Nitzan, and I've been working for the IDFWO, IDF Widows and Orphans, for the past almost 3 years now.
Wow.
Yes. And I'm a social worker, as you said, and I'm the manager of the youth department. So I do different programs especially for kids between the ages 6 to 18. Mainly OTMA camps. It's kind of like the Good Grief camp that they do here. And we have the camps 4th time during the year, during the high holidays, Sukkot, Passover, Hanukkah, and during the summer. We have like hundreds of kids coming there. We can share after his experience. And I do other programs as well, mentorship program and other programs with the Ministry of Defense, and I have a few programs with the older widows.
How did you get to be part of the IDFW, or what made you want to be part of this organization?
It's a good question. So I was a Jewish Agency Israel Fellow at the US.
Where?
At the University of Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there for 2 years. And when I came back to Israel, I saw like Shlomi posted something that he's looking for a social worker to work with orphan kids. And I felt that this job is exactly for me, because I'm a social worker, and also during my time in the US, I execute like different programs, and that's what I do here also at the IDFWO. And it felt like the perfect match for me, and it is, because I really enjoy it, and it's a really meaningful job.
When we introduced TAPS before, the word that kept on coming up was compassion, and definitely you exude that trait of compassion and, of course, deeply rooted Zionism, which probably manifested itself through your work at the University of Georgia. Tell us a little bit about the mission. How did it come to be, and how did it feel, to arrive here? What were your thoughts and feelings before coming?
So the idea to partnership with TAPS and to be part of a Good Grief camp, I think it came up like 2 months ago. Shlomi told me about it, and we weren't sure.
Shlomi is the CEO of the IDFWO in Israel. Yeah. I'm just saying for the sake of our viewers.
Yes. He told me about it, and it was after 2 years that we couldn't go out because of Corona, and I was so excited about it because during my time as the head of OTMA camps is the camps that we do in Israel. I can really tell the impact on the kids when they meet other kids, that they have a really deep connection and special bond between us because they know each other in the best way. Sometimes they don't even need to talk, and they just understand each other because everyone from the kids lost a family member. And when Shlomi told me about the opportunity for the kids to go here to the US and to meet other people, not only in Israel, but American people that lost a family member, I was so excited about it. And I feel so honored to be here because I feel that this connection between the kids can be so meaningful and important for them. Also in processing their loss, to know other kids that also lost their someone from the family, that they can talk to each other, they feel each other. Sometimes I feel that the kids in OTMA, they say when they go to school or other people don't necessarily understand them, and here they have the opportunity to meet other kids that knows them the best. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The OTMA camps that you're describing in Israel, for the sake of our viewers who have no idea what this world includes, what kind of activities do you have in those camps that are able to, like you're mentioning, to cope with the grief?
Yeah. So as I said, it's OTMA camps. It's for kids, orphan kids of the IDF between the ages 6 to 18, and we go between 4 or 5 days to travel in Israel. They have their counselors that joining them every camp, and we just travel around. We have different activities with the kids, and the kids. Some of them started the camps when they were 6 years old, and now they're 14, 15, 16. They're the best friends even after camp. So it's really meaningful to them. You can ask Uri after; he can tell you that one of his best friends is also from OTMA.
Uri, I'm so pleased to meet you. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
I'm great, and even better now that I know you. Continuing from what Nitzan just said, tell me a little bit about OTMA and friendships that you make there, and how that makes you feel in coping with the situation.
OTMA, wow. It's hard to describe. My best words for OTMA camps are, it's a second home. It's a second family for the children who lost their families. It's really something you can describe. It's the way you cope with the loss. It's the way you make new friends. It's the way you have fun with. It's everything.
And Nitzan was mentioning that you were actually making real friendships there.
Yeah, some of my best friends are from OTMA camps, and it's fun having someone who knows what you're dealing with, because in school or other activities you do, the people don't know what you're going through. So having those people here in OTMA camp, they help you, and you can really bond with people that know your pain. And
one of the most touching things I heard you say, I have to admit, I listened to some of your interviews in Hebrew in Israel, and you mentioned something about Abba, about Dad, that one of the things you loved the most was just hanging out in the house, knowing that he's there, just being with him and having him around. And that was truly one of the most profound statements I've ever heard spoken about this issue. So in the great tradition of reliving the memory of those we love, tell us a little bit about Abba, about your dad, something to share with our viewers so that they get to know who he was and who he was to you?
My father was Lieutenant Colonel Dolav Keidar. He died in Operation Protective Edge in 2014. He was killed in action. And he was, at the last duty, he was a battalion commander of the infantry officer course in Israel. So he trained the leaders of the future in Israel, in the Israeli military.
And how was he at home? Something that he liked to do or that you remember, a fond memory that you have of him?
At home, he was like my father. He was like my best friend. Even though he came only in the weekends and during the holidays sometimes, you need to, when he comes, you need to explore the whole opportunity. You need to maximize, I don't know, the time you have with him because it's so little. So you try to do everything you can, but eventually it becomes a tradition that, like, when he came home, we just, like, he read stories to me, or we played basketball or watched it.
Amazing. Tracy mentioned before their visit to Israel. Did you get to meet TAP's mission in Israel?
Yeah, there was actually a tour in Tel Aviv that we were both invited to. And that was a chance to meet them before we go there, before we go to Good Grief Camp. And it was really nice because when I first saw Ben Volker, I just knew there was something between us. So, like, me and Shai, was my friend from the mission, we started talking to him and we realized we have so much things in common and hobbies and stuff. So we just talked and enjoyed it. And now we're like in his house, it's like much more relevant, but we stay in touch, we keep contact, like we talk to each other, and that's it.
It's beautiful. We mentioned the IDFWO in general. Can you share with our viewers a little bit about the activities that the organization does in support of you?
To support children like me in Israel, the IDFWO does a lot of things, especially the main things I can think about right now are OTMA camps, as I said, and Nitzan said, which are 4 times a year, and like we do activities with our friends and travel Israel. There's also a mentorship program that every kid who participates in it gets a mentor that every week he spends 3 hours with him or so, and they just talk or do things together.
Amazing. It's that being together, that emotive that keeps on coming up. How were you received? What did you think before coming here? What were your expectations, and how were you received by the community here in the US?
My expectations was to be greeted well and have fun. And I was genuinely surprised when I came here, because when I came, I saw that the people are so friendly and like the community is so accepting. And like we had a dinner party with the community, and it was really nice meeting all of the people and talking to them.
Yeah, I have to tell you that this is a recurring theme as well. In my history, years ago, I had the privilege of accompanying, like Nitzan, a similar mission to Canada. And I'll never forget, one of the teens who came up to me and said, Shahar, I just want to ask you, why do these people care so much about us, and why are they so friendly towards us? Which is really an amazing moment to understand the bond, not just between Israel and the American Jewish community, but also specifically, like you keep on repeating, the bond between people, the bond that connects us. Let's talk about the camp. You're getting together with, some of the American families who've gone through a similar experience. What's your hope from the camp? What do you hope to come out with?
My hope is, first of all, is meeting new people, which is always nice, especially meeting people who understand you and what you have been through.
Right.
I'd also like to have fun in the activities, like travel DC, and that's it.
I love that. having fun and enjoying life and appreciating every moment. Uri, Nitzan, it's such a pleasure and such an honor to speak to you both, truly, from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
I'd like to thank you so much for joining us on JBS, and truly have a safe and enjoyable trip here in the US and safe travels back home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We speak often of shared values between the United States and Israel, upholding the lofty principles of freedom and democracy in a world where many parts of it are still hostile to these very ideas. Well, defending those freedoms does not come free, and your families are the ones who pay the price, losing loved ones, so that all of us here in the United States and in Israel are able to lead an open and free life. We salute you for your sacrifice and for your loved ones' service for the nations of Israel and the United States, and words alone cannot express our gratitude. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And to all our viewers, I would like to say, embrace your freedom and never forget where it came from. Thank you all for joining us. Stay safe and stay healthy. I'd like to thank our director, Sloan Copeland, JBS's managing director, Dara Golob, our technical manager, Michael Paley, transmission manager, John McDevitt, and to our wonderful producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. For JBS, I'm Shahar Azani. Until next time, shalom and lehitraot. See you soon.